So good, so good, so good.
New fall arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Vince, Kurt Geiger London, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club at Nordstrom Rack to unlock exclusive discounts on your favorite brands. Shop new arrivals first and more. Plus, get an extra 5% off every Rack purchase with a Nordstrom credit card. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hi, welcome. Happy Friday. You know, I had a great time filling in for a radio show on the Chorus Radio Network at noon today, and we had a lot of great calls on said show, and it got me thinking, we'd love it if you called The Last Show and took part in our conversations. Our number is 1-888-505-6644. That's 1-888-505-6644. I'll give it to you in jingle format. 1-888-505-6644. So yeah, if you hear something you got an opinion on, call the show. Anyway, here's what you'll learn on tonight's program. When no one's watching and no one is checking, people sometimes cheat. But when an AI does the cheating for us, that's when things get spicy. So in 10 minutes time, we'll dive into how AI can make dishonesty easier and what that means for all of us using common chatbot tools. After that is everything you wanted to know about a Oaxacan culinary delicacy, grasshoppers. They're delicious, believe it or not. And we'll learn about the rich culinary history of eating grasshoppers. Man, I love doing this show. That's some of what you'll hear on tonight's program. Let's dive in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
It's breaking shark news with our foreign shark correspondent, Tony Five, who reports live from the scene of his apartment in London, England, about an Australian wetsuit that could save you from your next shark attack. This is news that's relevant to most people, important for really all of us. Tony, welcome to the show.
David Cooper, always a pleasure, my friend. Live from London in my flat. Yes, when I am regularly swimming in the River Thames and there is a great white shark prowling the banks, my friend, I am consistently worried about getting bitten. A la Jaws style, David, a la Jaws.
That's actually where Jaws was set, in the Thames. They just made it look like it was California or whatever.
Yeah, Roy Schneider was actually putting on a massively funny American accent. It was on the banks of the River Thames. If you didn't notice, a lot of the film produced is on tea. He was sitting there drinking his cup of tea and he goes, "We're going to need a bigger tea boat." But you know, obviously they cut it out. We're going to need a bigger boat. Everybody got famous, blah, blah, blah. But yes, I regularly swim in the Thames. It's lovely. Whilst I'm not ingesting Coke cans and all sorts of paraphernalia, my biggest fear, David, is getting bitten by a great white shark.
I don't suffer from irrational shark fear. I mean, I am scared of them in the sense that I know they could kill me, but there are people that will not even put their feet in a beautiful beach where there's no fish or sharks around for fear of it. It's like snakes and spiders. I'm not really scared of snakes, but if you put a python on my head, yes, I'll be scared. But I am scared of spiders. I guess that may be a geolocated fear you're talking about. I'm not afraid of great white sharks because they're in Australia and I'm in London. It's never going to happen. Australia also has massive spiders and Australia has massive snakes. So I don't know whether you can hear it, dear listener, but there is a theme running through what I just said. Don't go to Australia. Yeah, whenever I talk to people on the show from Australia, and they always have to get up at weird times to talk to us, I'm like, at the commercial break, I'm like, hey, so how's Australia? They're like, beautiful. I'm like, I ain't going there. But research on shark bites does say that unprovoked shark bites on humans are pretty rare. There's something like, 7, 8, 9, 75 billion people, and only 50, in fact, less than 50 occur. And that was last year worldwide. So it's not really a problem, but it is really cool technology. Scientists have come up with a wetsuit that may protect people from shark bites. Like the shark will chomp on you, but it'll be like as if your grandmother with no teeth and her dentures out bit you, and maybe a little more painful.
And I know you've had very much experience with that in your childhood that we'll discuss on another show. But yes, I mean, it's bite-resistant material, but it doesn't stop sharks from biting you. And obviously it can reduce the injuries. You get like severe crush injuries. You get really bad biting injuries. And they taught, and I was thinking, how on earth did they teach these? How on earth do you find this out? Is there some poor guy put in this suit and go, off you go, David, we'll see you in half an hour. And if he comes back alive, brilliant. If he doesn't, well, didn't work. Back to the drawing board. But what they do is they drag these suits behind the motorboats and, tease the sharks chomp and bite them, then they bring them up and analyze them. It's fascinating.
They use like crash test dummies or shark bite dummies, I guess.
Shark bite dummies. I mean, there are worse jobs, David.
There are. If you do have to test out this suit in person, I would hope that job pays well. At least $5 a week.
I mean, I'm looking $650 a week with medical insurance. What do you think?
I think yes. Sharks do swim off the coast of like California and maybe as high as Pacific Canada. I don't know. Certainly Mexico, like Baja California. I think at some stage, weren't there sharks in the Golden Gate Bridge River? I don't know what you call it. The bit between Alcatraz. The San Francisco Bay. Yeah.
Yeah, there were sharks there that used to be, there's quite deep water there. And initially, the way of protecting yourself from shark bites is medieval. It's chainmail. It was literally chainmail, what knights and stuff used to use.
I have a much better solution. What are you doing out there? Get the heck out of the water. Why are you going near sharks? I'm not going in the ocean. I'm not doing that. What are you, nuts?
Yeah, I like your way of preventing shark bites is basically a big placard saying, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get out of the water.
If I could get my mother to voice what I just said, what are you doing? Get out of the water, you schmuck. I feel like we could just play that in every diver's ear and save those less than 50 great white bites worldwide.
I'll be honest with you, a Jewish mother screaming at me would stop me doing anything, David.
Well, it also could be a little bit of a turn on, but that's a conversation for my psychiatrist.
It's not Therapy Tuesday, David, on whatever day it is today. No,
it is not Therapy Wednesdays on a Friday, on Monday. All right, our next story, this one should surprise no one. It comes out of the U.S., where 1 in 5 people are now apparently, according to the Pew Research Center, they get their news from TikTok. And this number rises from just 3% of people 5 years ago in 2020. I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I hope people aren't getting their important news from us, but there are better outlets than TikTok to get your important news. And the amount of like dis and misinformation and deep fake videos and just regular people reporting on news stories who don't know what they're talking about, sort of like us, Tony, it's just so worrisome that this is where people are getting their news. And as you look at me, I'm thinking, are you one of these people? I hope not.
Well, for those who don't know, TikTok, social media platform, but it's basically random, quick, 10 seconds, short attention span videos.
What are you doing explaining TikTok to people? People know it's a video sharing platform.
I didn't. I thought that was just a noise my clock make, David, for long time. But basically, it's a thumb draining app of a thing. You can't pay attention to it. It's basically an ADHD app where you just flick through stuff. And unfortunately, people are getting their news because it can be processed so quickly on anybody's smartphone. There's so much disinformation spread on it, and it becomes viral almost immediately because I don't know how these algorithms work. You can probably explain it better than anybody I know. But yeah, like things can happen, like newsworthy things, and within seconds, it's spread all around the world and it can be completely wrong.
And it's all young people, ages 18 to 29, I think is up to 43%, ages 30 to 49, 25%. The baby boomers and the Gen Xers, it's way lower. They aren't adopting this platform, which I think just confirms what we already know about TikTok, that it's for young people. Like I already feel too old on it sometimes.
Oh God, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I don't use my thumb for anything else, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely horrific. I have a neighbour, anecdotally, I have a Scottish neighbour, absolutely insane. Gets all of her information from social media, from TikTok. She was the COVID denier. She doesn't even believe in vaccines or vacuum cleaners, David.
She's a vacuum conspiracist.
Correct.
She's an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah, she's an anti-vaxxer. So yeah, exactly. She'll argue with you all the time about anything you say, and her answer is, well, I saw it on TikTok.
I mean, that's basically today's modern peer-reviewed academic scholarly journal. I saw it on TikTok.
I saw it on TikTok. My thumb scrolled past it at the speed of light, and I believed it.
Tony, it's always such a pleasure having you on the show. Tony Five, our foreign correspondent, joins us every night to correspond foreignly. Tony, thanks again, my friend.
David, always a pleasure, my friend. Good night, everyone.
Coming up next, people do little things to cheat, like on their taxes and stuff. But when given the option to have an AI help them cheat, they're more likely to cheat. So do these fancy new chatbot tools make us more dishonest? We will tackle that hefty question on the other side of the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Abercrombie denim is everything right now. Denim should feel like this. Confident, easy, like your butt has never looked better. If you didn't know, Abercrombie's Curve Love denim went viral in 2019 for eliminating waist gap, and it's still a game changer. Between that and their classic fits with a straighter line from waist to hip, the perfect denim does exist. Shop Abercrombie denim in the app, online, and in store.
Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The last show with David Cooper.
People can lie, cheat, and bend the rules, but what happens when they let a machine do their dirty work, when they do cheating with large language models? Well, tonight we'll talk about AI, ethics, and the curious ways that humans can offload bad behavior, and how it can make you a little more dishonest. I'm here with someone who's done research in this area. He works in human understanding of algorithms and machines. He's Professor Dr. Nils Köbis, and he works at the Duisburg Essen University in Germany. Nils, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
I love that you researched unethical behavior using AI. What does it mean to delegate your dirty work or do bad tasks with AI?
Yeah, so basically the inspiration for this work came from a review that we wrote, which was inspired by the idea that, look, we know from behavioral science that other people can have a really strong pull on our moral compass, right? Like if I observe someone else is cheating, I'm more likely to do it because it's easier to justify. And we were basically thought about writing a review paper in which we don't look at how other people influence our ethical behavior, but how AI might influence us, right? And so we defined different roles through which they could do it. The AI could be a bad role model, could be a partner, could be an advisor, or could be a delegate. And so basically the study that just got published is on this particular role where we looked at what happens to people's moral preferences when they can actually not decide themselves, but let an AI basically make decisions for them.
Let's make this more concrete. What would be an example of such a decision or such a delegation?
Yeah, I mean, there are many. I don't know if you rent out your apartment on Airbnb still.
No, I never would do that. I'm not a fan of anyway, but yes, no, I get it. Okay, renting out my place on Airbnb.
You're renting out your place on Airbnb and you might see the option of smart pricing, right? So basically an algorithm will set the price for you. And that's just one example where algorithms are setting prices in online market settings, right? And it's a cool example in a way because on one hand, I mean, I did it when I was still living in Amsterdam. I was renting my place and I saw this suggestion, which was way higher than I had initially expected. I was like, yeah, cool, let me do that. Now, in many cases, when you let algorithms set prices in online markets, they start colluding with one another, right? So there's evidence that they actually start setting prices that are suboptimal to the consumers without the person who's setting the prices actually explicitly asked them to do that.
Is it price fixing if a machine does it? Isn't price fixing illegal?
Yeah, which is exactly why we had a huge case here in Germany about gas stations that seem to have done that. Now, if I'm the gas station owner, I might just realize, like, as soon as I use this algorithm, I make way more revenue. That's super convenient. And I think there is a certain temptation to basically turn a blind eye as to how the algorithm actually did accrue these nice benefits, right? And you can think of other examples that are maybe a bit more everyday life situations, like declaring your taxes, right? There are AI tools that you can use to help you declare your taxes. And obviously, there are many ways how you can declare your taxes in a very favorable way. And we think that, in many other instances too, it might be very tempting to let an algorithm basically engage in unethical behavior that we might ourselves be not willing to engage in, but to basically turn a blind eye or willfully ignore how it actually did it.
Or maybe be intentionally vague, leave details out, and then the AI goes based on the info it has, but you kind of gave it dishonest info, and then it gives you the tax return results or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what we found in the first two studies, is that the interface through which you're telling the AI what to do really, really matters, right? So imagine like people are doing this task, and I can tell you in a moment the task we use to measure ethical behavior. And when they do it themselves, 5% of them are dishonest. Now, there's real money at stake. So, they get money if they cheat. Now, if they delegate the same decision to an algorithm, all of a sudden, 90% of people are cheating.
What?
And that has to do with the way that the interface through which you tell the algorithm what to do is super vague. As you just said, there's what some researchers call moral wiggle room, right?
Yeah.
So I can basically tell myself, like, well, I just set the knob in a certain way. I just gave it a goal. I didn't ask it explicitly to cheat. But I take the benefits if it gives me some, right? So, and that's basically what we found in these first two studies, that the way you're telling the algorithm really matters, because we found much lower levels of cheating if you had to tell the algorithm exactly the rules that it should follow.
So are we more comfortable with these omissions or this vagueness than we are explicitly being dishonest by giving it dishonest instructions?
That's exactly right. So I think it makes it much easier to basically exploit this moral wiggle room when I just have to set goals. Or, for example, we had another interface where you had to choose the training data, right? So there you could always say, like, well, I just chose this training data. I didn't know what it would do in the end. So you always have a little bit of room that you can exploit. And we know from a lot of research in behavioral ethics, which is this field in behavioral science to study unethical behavior, is we know that people are often doing what they can justify to themselves and to others, right? And I think algorithms really are an interesting new phenomenon on that is influencing our behavior more passively by being an advisor, for example. But in our case, it also influences our behavior by actively doing the particular task on our behalf.
What was the task you studied? You mentioned you tell it to me. I'm curious now.
Yeah. So I love that task, David. That got me into behavioral ethics. It's called the die rolling task, and it's basically as simple so that you can even play it with kids, right? So you get a die, a 6-sided playing die. And you roll the die, and I'm telling you, I'm the experimenter now. I'm wearing a lab coat, and your task is like, roll this die and report to me the number that you saw. And in some instances, you would have it under a cup where it's just a little peeking hole, so only you know the actual number you rolled. And then you get out, and you're about to tell me the number you rolled, but then you see, if you report a 1, you get €1 or $1. If you report a 2, you get $2. If you report a 3, you get $3. Now imagine you rolled the die, you saw a 2. All of a sudden, you're in a situation where you have a temptation to lie for profit, right? So are you going to say, I rolled a 6 and get maximum pay? Or are you going to be honest and just get $2? And this task basically has not just been a fun task to run experiments with, it also has what researchers call external validity. So it actually correlates with rule violations outside of the lab, People who are lying in this task, they are more likely to take public transport without a ticket. They're more likely to show up late for work, and they're even more likely to use deceitful sales practices in markets. So we can use that task to kind of get a proxy for people's ethical behavior. And we use that particular task in a version that you can run on the computer screen, and basically had different treatments, as we say. So different people would do the same task under different circumstances.
So how could we use AI to possibly cheat in this?
Yeah, you can tell an algorithm, for example, how you want it to report these die rolls on your behalf, right? And this you can do via rules. You can tell it exactly like, if the die roll is a 1, I want you to report a, and then you tell it exactly the numbers. You can use training data based on previous participants that you basically say, like, these different participants should basically inform the algorithm to do its behavior. Or you can have what we call this ethical knob, right? So where you basically just tell the algorithm the goal it should pursue. And this last setting where you just set the goal was the one that was actually, cheating went through the roof, basically, when you had that interface.
And people chose that one overwhelmingly.
Well, basically, we had we had two different versions of the task, right? So one, we basically forced them to delegate, right? So they had no other option. One group would be in the setting with this ethical knob. The other group would be in the setting with the rules. The third one with the training data, and the fourth one where they did it themselves. In the follow-up study, we actually gave them a choice. We said, like, look, here, you can either do the delegation or you do it yourself. It was interesting, we had a 50-50 split of people opting to delegate. But when they were in the delegation context, they were very likely to cheat, right? So that was actually kind of interesting.
At a high level, what does this say about human nature when we use tools like AI to do things like tax returns or price our Airbnbs or do everyday tasks?
Yeah, I think it really tells us a lot about our moral psychology, and that, AI could be a very convenient scapegoat in some cases, right? It might be very useful as what people now call more and more agentive AI models that can actually do tasks. So OpenAI's operator, you just tell it, like, order me some food. And I think these type of models are basically on the rise. And I think what our study shows, and we kind of argue for, is like, we should take the risk seriously that people might take this as a very, very convenient way to break ethical rules, but not necessarily feel bad about themselves. Because usually when we break ethical rules, we feel kind of bad, especially when we don't really have a good reason why we did it. And I think AI can really tip the scale there a bit on how we sort of morally account for unethical behavior.
Well, great. So great that tools like ChatGPT are widely available and people use them all the time. This is just such a wonderful finding. I kid, of course, but it's really interesting stuff. Thanks for walking me through your study, Nils.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
Professor Dr. Nils Köbis is a researcher at Duisburg-Essen University in Germany. Up next, everything you wanted to know and some things you probably didn't about a culinary delicacy, grasshoppers.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Routine, adjective, used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice an individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules but behave as if they do not exist. Routine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Our topic tonight, grasshoppers. Would you eat them? A lot of people haven't tried them, but in Oaxaca, Mexico, it has been a tasty tradition for thousands of years, and that's what we're going to discuss with the author of Eating Grasshoppers, Chapulines, and the Women Who Sell Them, published by the University of Texas Press, available wherever books are sold. He's an anthropology professor at The Ohio State University. A mouthful, but his name, Dr. Jeffrey Cohen. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. It's nice to be here. Appreciate it.
What made you so interested in the culinary history of eating insects, I guess?
Eating insects, yeah. So edible insects or entomophagy, it's a really understudied area. It's really important. I got into it in the late part of the 20th century when I was doing research in southern Mexico, and the folks I was working with were eating grasshoppers. And I'm an anthropologist. One of the things we do is go in and experience the stuff around us. We use a process called participant observation. So I had to try them, and they're delicious.
I think for a lot of people, they're happy to eat things like lobsters, which to me is just a giant sea cockroach, a delicious one. But when it comes to crustaceans or things that look like insects, if it's in the water, I think a lot of people who live in the West are like, great. And if it's an insect, they say no. And we shouldn't look at things this way, should we?
I don't think so. It's sort of what are you used to eating? And so insects are consumed by about 2 billion people every day on the planet. So there are a lot of people eating a lot of insects, and there are different sorts of possibilities. Not everybody doesn't eat every insect. Everyone has like special ones. And so where I work in southern Mexico, the specialty, there are a few things. There are the grasshoppers called chapulín. There are flying ants that are called chiquitanas. And then in a couple other parts of Mexico, they're going to consume other sorts of things. Escamol is another delicacy that's from ants. And then there's like also the byproducts, honey, for example. I mean, it's made by bees. right?
It is?
So,
wow, I had no idea.
Yeah. It doesn't just come from the store.
I thought it was made in the aisle in the grocery store. It's just that's its natural habitat. Before we get into the rich cultural history here, I want to do that. What do they taste like? I've eaten cricket tacos. Are crickets anything like grasshoppers, or is that a real faux pas to compare the two?
So the folks that we work with, they would never eat a cricket. So a cricket, a griot, they say is just one of the worst tastes you can possibly try. Yeah.
I thought it was good. They were crunchy.
Yeah. Crickets can be crunchy, but they tend to be kind of metallic-y in their flavor. And they're just not as good as a grasshopper. So the chapulín that we work, the women that produce them and the people we work with, they eat them in a couple of different ways. There's large ones that are adult, and they may be up to about an inch long. And those, when you eat them, you kind of know, okay, I'm eating a grasshopper. But they have little ones that have just like hatched, and those are really delicious, and they can be very sweet. They tend to grow up consuming alfalfa, and so they tend to be pretty sweet. Whereas crickets, they're not eating things that are going to make them taste sweeter. They tend to be a little bitter.
Seems like you're on the side of the people in Oaxaca who look down on crickets.
Yeah, so we're not gonna we don't go there. I tell you, we asked some of the women that we worked with, started asking them, like, what do you think of a cricket? We got laughed out of our interviews. They were just like, woohoo! They were like, gringo, who would eat a cricket?
And tell me about how they're prepared, because for me it was all about the preparation that made the crickets so delicious.
So I know. So one thing they do say about the crickets is they wish grasshoppers were easier to fix, because grasshoppers are harder to manage than crickets. Crickets you can raise in your house with a couple of buckets, and boom, you've got a cricket farm. But grasshoppers, you have to go in the field. You catch them early in the morning. The reason it's early in the morning is it's before they get super active and jump. So you get them in the morning. You catch them in like butterfly nets. You put them in a box. You let them sit for a while so that they'll process anything that's in their systems. And then as you put them in a corner, they kind of go very dormant. And as you want to produce them, you can take them out. Then you put them in boiling water very quickly.
Blanch them, I guess.
Yeah, and they actually turn red. They have the same amino acid, or I think it's an amino acid, in their chitin that a lobster has, so they turn red.
It's a very appetizing color, that bright red.
Yeah, it is. It's very pretty. You then toast them with a little bit of lemon, a little bit of chile, there's a salt that they use. It's called sal de gusano that has agave worms in it, ground into it. You can flavor it with other kinds of chile. You can flavor it with garlic. It's very tasty. It tends to be super lemony because you squirt lemon all over the top. So it's a yummy kind of taste. And then you can roll them into a taco. You can put them into you can put them into almost anything. I've had them in a vinaigrette. I've had them baked into bread. There's all kinds of different ways to eat them.
Talk to me about these women who produce this staple food and have been doing so for thousands of years.
Right. So the roots of the production go back thousands of years. We know that the grasshoppers were probably one of the most important protein sources in the past. There were no stock animals, no livestock until the Spaniards arrived. So there were not a lot of ways to there were not things to eat. It wasn't like, well, should I have a chapulín or should I have a steak? No, there was only a grasshopper. And that's, of course, changed really in lots of ways right now. But the region is, the estimates are that they're producing hundreds of thousands of tons a year. And I mean, it's a huge business. And the women who are doing this are selling their grasshoppers by the kilo. Okay, so, a little bit more than 2 pounds. And some of them they're averaging 15 kilos a week. And they're selling them for about 600 pesos a kilo. And they're making incredible money doing it. And so for them, it's just a wonderful kind of market that they've really done well with.
And like the Spanish, when they came, I guess they just wrote this off as like an indigenous food that they weren't going to eat kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, when you have the two cultures coming together, we tend to see movement between cultures. One of the reasons it's so much fun to study food is that people love to talk about food. They love to try new foods, and so foods tend to move back and forth. In the early years of the Spanish conquest, that didn't happen. And in fact, things like the grasshoppers were really kind of pushed aside. But now they've come back, and you find people all over in any sort of situation eating them. They're considered really hot cuisine in some restaurants, as a real sign of tradition and the past in some. And so it's pretty cool. And all the things that the Spaniards did bring, cattle, all kinds of livestock, new kinds of grains, they've been incorporated in kind of interesting ways, not always in the easiest kind of way, but now you see foods flowing kind of back and forth in fun ways.
If I wanted to try grasshoppers or chapulinas, where could I grab them? Like, I guess I live in New York. Is it a readily available food or not so much?
I'm sure you could find them in a little tienda, in maybe a taqueria. They'll probably have them. If you see a restaurant that is kind of it's billing itself as a Oaxacan-based restaurant, they might have them. It's season. They're in season right now, so it's almost getting towards the end of the season in the fall. So they should be in little restaurants if you can find them. If you are brave, you can get online, and you can find them on all kinds of social media. You can find us. There are a couple of sites that people run. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm here with Dr. Jeffrey Cohen, who's an anthropology professor at The Ohio State University. Check out his book, Eating Grasshoppers, Chapulinos, and the Women Who Sell Them, published by the University of Texas Press. That's available wherever books are sold. Jeff, thanks for talking to me today. This was a fun interview.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. Lovely to be here.
After the break, we scroll, we swipe, we refresh. But is getting distracted all the time the answer to a digital overload? Or could it be boredom itself? Boredom as a good thing. Coming up next, we'll explore how philosophy and silence can help us reclaim reflection at a time when we all seem to be allergic to stillness. I'm David Cooper, and more of The Last Show coming up.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
In a world with constant buzzing phones, endless feeds, and social media, boredom seems to be almost extinct. My upcoming guest argues that boredom isn't a flaw. It is essential. We need to be bored. Can silence rescue us from a digital overload? That's what we'll discuss with media and communications researcher from Newcastle University in the UK, Sebih Oruç. Sebih, welcome to the show.
Thank you for hosting me.
I read an article that you recently wrote. You make boredom sound almost radical. What makes you think people are so afraid of it these days, that 5 seconds of boredom means they need to grab their phone and scroll?
I think it's, rather than what I think, it is the reality. Like from people at very early ages to very I have done some research, and 60-year-old unschoolled women are using their phone when they're encountering few minutes of stillness. So it's not, I don't think it's what I think, it's the reality of contemporary time. And I think the reason why we are so much turning into our phones, our computers, TV, is because we are almost afraid of boredom. We are afraid of stillness, slowness.
What makes boredom so unpalatable? What makes boredom so difficult for us? What makes us want to just not be bored the second we're confronted with boredom?
Yeah, that's a very important question. And if we ask someone let's say Slovenian philosopher Zizek, it would be because we are afraid of facing ourselves, because our self is not so great. But my argument is different. My argument is because we have been living in a world where we constantly almost feel the need to do something and to be distracted. This is in like, I think it has to do with capitalism as an ideology, as a worldview. It almost like, you need to see the world as a place that you need to constantly do something, constantly improve yourself, constantly like be part of the system. Because like when you are not part of the system, it's almost a failure for capitalism. That's why like digital media and etc. is deeply related with like neoliberalism and consumerism and like,
Yeah, underneath the hood of my feed is buy, isn't it? I mean, between the sponsored ads, between people showing off their stuff that they purchased, capitalism is really there in social media. You're right, they are very much linked.
And like, I think we are at a new stage of capitalism where capitalism has exploited everything, and the only thing that is left is our attention. It's our time. It's our soul.
This got deep very quickly, and I like where this is going. What is the benefit to being bored? I was on a flight the other day, and my phone, I didn't have internet. I didn't download any music. I didn't want to watch any of the TV shows. And I just sat there and stared into the abyss. And my girlfriend thought I was crazy. She was reading a book or something. And I really enjoyed the flight. I just enjoyed sitting there. What benefit does being bored, doing nothing, not scrolling confer to us?
That's actually like, I think the next part of this essay is going to be about this. And I think it's mostly, so there are two kind of like, the philosopher that I'm referring, Heidegger, makes a distinction between two types of boredom. One is superficial boredom, and he actually gives pretty much the same example. He says like, I'm not talking about the boredom you have when you are waiting for the train that has been delayed, because that's not the boredom that will bring you, like profound questions, rethinking about yourself, rethinking your relation to the world.
Do you mean like deep existential boredom? Like that crushing, existential dread that you don't know what the future holds or that you might be deeply unhappy? Are we talking about the deep boredom?
Not necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily unhappiness. He does call it profound boredom, and he says it's an ontological status rather than a psychological, like, fleeting feeling. It's more about, so like the superficial boredom is the one that we have when we are waiting for a delayed train. And this doesn't bring us anything. Like, you are not going to make a new, like, discovery about yourself or like art or like, your life or political activism, let's say, while waiting for a delayed train. That won't happen. That won't happen. But if you like kind of quote unquote resist the temptation to continue, immediately kill this superficial boredom and let this boredom, like let's say like for the first 5 times you're not doing anything during this flight. When you let it to go to the stage of profound boredom, that can open a gate for you to relate with the being or with existing in a different world, in a different way that you have been. What this means is that you can, for example, discover something about yourself. You can discover, you can make a new kind of art. Like, I genuinely believe if this much distraction was there, we wouldn't have had Shakespeare or Dostoevsky or like, Tolstoy. We definitely wouldn't have them.
I feel very fortunate having been like a young adult in the 90s when I had to like sit at a computer and wait 15 minutes for it to turn on and wait for everything to load on the internet. I feel sort of fortunate that I had crushing boredom in my youth, and kids aren't getting that these days.
Exactly. And it starts at a very early age. Like, I have been visiting some family and etc. over the last few months. And like, it starts at the age of 2. Like, at the age of 2, people are like kids are scrolling down. And like, my argument is that like, the problem with digital culture is that it promises to like end your boredom, but it actually increases it. Like, people are bored, they turn to their phone and they are still bored. The study that I was quoting in my essay shows this. Like, the problem with digital culture, it doesn't kill boredom, and it prevents us from getting profound boredom. So we are stuck in the superficial boredom.
Interesting.
Which is not helpful in like your daily life, but also not helpful in the way that you can, like, for example, do something artistic, do something creative. Think about like a different way of organizing if you are like a community organizer or like an activist, like,
Yeah.
Whereas like the existing distractions continuously, that's how its relationship with capitalism becomes important. It just basically says the world is like this and it should be like this. Just get distracted, accept capitalism, accept all these inequalities, accept consumerism, accept that we are turning your attention, your time, your psyche into a commodity.
Just make sure you pay your credit card, your monthly bill on time.
Exactly.
The benefits of profound boredom, this as a gateway to depth and reflection and maybe something deeply creative. We're missing out on that when we doom scroll and then we're bored anyway, aren't we?
Exactly. And again, we are stuck in the superficial way. So if it's not that like there is boredom, but there is a specific type of boredom that doesn't help us either way. So it's like studies shows like social media usage or like, influencers, for example, are not necessarily more happy because they economize or like commodify every aspect of their life and like they continuously have to be present. And like the problem with digital culture, I think, is that like the time that you are not there or the activities that you don't put there almost are deemed non-existent. It's only there. So then it brings my the concept of das Man the Heidegger provides, like the day. It's like almost like a ghost that we all think is important to follow, but we are making all this ghost in the age of social media. So everybody is becoming part of a vicious circle where we recreate our boredom to make other people remain stuck in the superficial boredom.
Well, Sebih, I thought we were going to have a superficial conversation about the minor benefits of not using your phone, but we've really touched on some deep stuff. You're a great speaker. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing what you wrote about with me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you hosting, and I hope we can get rid of superficial boredom and have some profound boredom that will lead us, all of us, to rethink and not take things for granted and invent and create.
Me too. Sebih Oruç is a media and communications researcher at Newcastle University in the UK. Sebih, thanks again. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much for hosting. I appreciate it.
Coming up next, ever heard the phrase weaponized incompetence? It's when I don't know how is just code for I don't want to or I won't, which can lead to frustrations. After the break, we'll dig into how this quiet dynamic is breaking people's marriages. This is The Last Show. I am David Cooper.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
The Last Show with David Cooper, where bad therapy meets good radio.
Here's a controversial one, a quiet but powerful relationship killer, weaponized incompetence. When saying, I don't know how to your significant other really means, I don't want to, or I will not. And from that, household labor can fall unevenly. Partners grow tired of one another, and relationships can crack under the weight. We're here to discuss this with Callie Ahlgrim, a senior pop culture writer at Business Insider, who recently wrote about this. Callie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I worry I fall guilty to this one, so I'm going to be taking notes. How would you define weaponized incompetence? It's kind of a funny phrase for something that maybe isn't so funny.
It is, and it feels loaded. It feels like a mouthful, but really what it is just when you pretend not to know how to do something in order to get your partner, or even it could be in a workplace setting, a coworker or a sibling or someone in your environment. You want them to do it for you, basically. So you just say, I don't know how to do it, or you do it so much better than me. And then that becomes your out.
Is this different from being genuinely bad at something, or are those two linked? Are people bad at things because they never try and they just say, I don't want to? Is there a subtle difference here?
Definitely. That's where the weaponized piece comes in. So obviously incompetence is its own issue. Maybe you've never learned how to do something. Maybe you've never been taught. Maybe you're just bad at it. That's cool. But I think where it becomes weaponized or where the issue comes in that I reported on is where you're unwilling to learn or there's no improvement over time when the person that you're offloading this work to has expressed, hey, I'd like you to try harder at this, or I'd like to not have to load the dishwasher every time I get home from work, and there's no improvement or there's no growth. That's where it becomes like more of an issue of intent.
Your article mentions the phrase emerged, I don't know, in the mid 2000s. Why do you think it caught on then, and why is it resurfacing right now?
Yeah, it's sort of the concept has been around for a long time, in feminist discourse where obviously like the gender gap in household labor is not anything new. That's been studied over decades. But there was a Wall Street Journal article in the mid 2000s that actually used the term strategic incompetence to describe how people at work sort of act like they don't know what they're doing in order to not be given tasks that they don't want to do. And then more recently, post COVID, the term shifted to weaponized incompetence, and it took off, I think, in large part because COVID forced people back into the home together with their partners and made people question, like, whose work is more valuable, the wives or the husbands, like if we use it in a heteronormative setting. And the women typically became the main default once again for household labor. So since then, as women have gone back into the workforce and like return to office mandates have come back, it's sort of like the psychological ripples are still happening. It still feels like women are taking on the bulk of the labor, even though like a lot of women work just as much as their husbands or their partners now.
You touched upon it just a minute ago, this idea that it's intentional. Is it always intentional? Can work fall onto someone subconsciously? Like, how important is it to think about intent and impact when it comes to this behavior?
Yeah, I think it is largely and usually intentional. I think that's what people would say if they are accused of this or if their partner brings this up. That tends to be the response. I don't know I'm doing it or I don't mean to be doing it. The term itself does define intent. Like if it is true weaponized incompetence, it is intentional. But I think typically speaking, the term has become a catch-all for a large set of behaviors that's more cultural. Like typically it describes men, right? Like a man in a relationship who doesn't want to load the dishwasher, he doesn't want to change the diaper or whatever. But we have to understand and consider the fact that a lot of men aren't taught to do these things. They're not really like expected to do these things by society and by like their own family structures. So there has to be a little bit of leeway and like a learning curve when this becomes an issue.
So how would you suggest that heterosexual relationships, suppose a listener out there is hearing this and thinking, gee, my partner does this. How would you suggest they get out of this cycle where one partner says, oh, I'm not good at it, or I don't know how, and then the other one ends up doing the bulk of the work?
Totally. I asked therapists the same thing. I spoke to a bunch. I actually spoke to some divorce attorneys too, who said like, yeah, if this isn't addressed, it can bring people into our office. So that is something to look out for. But the therapist I spoke to basically said like, you don't want to come at the conversation with a lot of accusatory language. The term is loaded. Maybe you want to avoid the term entirely, the weaponized incompetence. I mean, maybe you just want to say, focus on the practical impact. Say to your partner, hey, when you continually avoid doing XYZ chore, it makes me have to do it. And that makes me feel resentful over time. That way, you're not necessarily saying, I believe that you're doing this on purpose, but you're focusing on the fact that this makes you feel a certain way and it is putting a strain on your relationship. And hopefully your partner can zoom out and see that the effect is more important than the cause.
It sounds like my first couples therapist I went to, approaching problems collaboratively rather than combatively. Let's talk about how much this is tied to men being socialized to not really do housework or to caregive. Could this be seen as a symptom of like bigger cultural patterns? This is just one small thing, but the wider problem is cultural?
Absolutely. I think this problem or this phenomenon rather is inextricably tied to like gender roles in general. You have this pervasive concept in straight relationships that the woman is responsible for the house and the man is responsible for like bringing home the bacon. The problem is that like feminism brought women into the workforce, but there hasn't been a comparative social movement for men into the home. So as women have gotten more powerful in the workforce and women have become more prominent members of society in ways outside of household work, they're doing both now. That's really where the issue comes in, is that if you and your partner are both working full-time jobs and then you get home and only one of you is doing everything at home, it doesn't matter what the intent behind that is. The impact is that's going to build resentment and it's going to feel like an unequal partnership. One of the divorce attorneys I spoke to basically said, it doesn't matter what the term is. The issue is that if you don't feel like your partner is a real partner, then that's going to cause problems.
I imagine it would. Let's talk about people discussing this online. TikTok, Reddit are full of stories, jokes about this, social media posts full of people venting about their quote unquote idiot partners, others online validating them. Do you think this kind of content is helping couples address the issue, or is it just fueling blame?
I think it's a double-edged sword. It can, I think, help a lot of people who are experiencing this sort of unequal division of labor to put a name to it and to realize that like maybe it's not entirely innocent. Maybe my partner is dodging work. Maybe he doesn't believe that it's his responsibility to do these things. And this needs to be addressed. So seeing other women complain about stuff like this and having that camaraderie, I think that can be helpful. But when it does become a catch-all, like I said before, for just general malaise in your relationship and feeling resentful, then I don't think that's super helpful. That's why you always want to approach these issues with generosity at first and collaboratively, as you said. And obviously, if it doesn't change, if things just continue to be bad, then, you reserve the right to walk away, or you reserve the right to kick up a bit more of a fit about it. But I think that the social media hive mind can be a little bit dangerous sometimes for somebody if they're trying to just like genuinely address this issue in their relationship.
Do you hope to see change here? Like in writing this article, are you hoping to fuel change? Do you think younger men are going to be more proactive at home, or we're just going to have the same old problems?
I certainly hope that things shift. And I spoke to some of my own male friends about this, and a lot of them did not know the term. They had never heard of it. But when I explained it to them, they were like, oh, yeah, I can totally see where I've done this. Or one of my friends said, I definitely did that with my mom growing up, like, oh, mom, I don't know how to load the dishwasher, that kind of thing. So I think, like I said, putting a name to something can definitely help somebody identify their own behavior. And I would hope that if you want to be a real partner to your loved one, then you are going to approach these issues with like an open mind and try to understand, even if you don't feel like it's your fault, even if you feel like, well, my mom did everything for me growing up, so I don't know how to do any of this stuff. That doesn't mean you can't learn, right? You are perfectly capable of learning these things. You just don't want to maybe you don't want to.
The article is called Weaponized Incompetence is Back, and it's driving modern women out of their marriages. You can read that in Business Insider, where Callie Ahlgrim works as a senior pop culture writer. Callie, thanks for talking to me. I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you.
Up next, a salacious headline: married, single, young, old. People are having less sex than ever. A new study says we are in a sex recession. But why? I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show, and we'll learn that after the break.
Finally in your wellness era? Then you know gut health is gut wealth. And with 20 years of science behind it, Activia can help keep those good gut vibes going. Deliciously smooth and creamy, Activia probiotic yogurts and dailies have billions of live and active probiotics and help support gut health while you go about your day. Your gut is where it all begins, so start with Activia. Enjoying Activia twice a day for 2 weeks as part of a balanced diet and healthy lifestyle can help reduce the frequency of minor digestive discomfort.
Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Married, single, young, old, no matter who you are, you're probably having less sex than ever. A new study calls it a sex recession. And my upcoming guest says people are bed rotting. I guess the question is, why is our collective libido on the decline? I'm here with Professor of Sociology from University of Virginia, Brad Wilcox, to discuss. Brad, welcome to the program.
David, it's great to be with you today.
I love that the moment we're in, you're calling a sex recession. If you were to design like a billboard or an ad or just a short thing to let people know what's going on, what would you say in giant letters?
I would just say sex is down. And I think it's a surprise, to many of us. I've been talking about family and relationships and sex in my classes at UVA for more than 20 years and would never have kind of anticipated that we'd be kind of in this moment. But here we are.
What are the numbers like? Like, how much sex were we having in the past? How much sex are we having now?
Yeah, so we have good data that goes back to 1990, and it tells us that back in 1990, 55% of adults aged 18 to 64 were having sex at least once a week or more. And now we are down to 37% in 2024. And what's striking about that is it's even lower than it was in the COVID pandemic. So this is it's a pretty big shift, and it's from my perspective, it's troubling. So that's what's happening.
When I hear bed rotting, I think of the family and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like never leaving the bed. Was it the grandparents? Can you paint us a picture of that? What is going on when you say people are bed rotting?
Well, so I have, I've got a big family. I've got a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers, a lot of young adults. And so I see a lot of stuff both with them and with their friends and acquaintances. And, just one of the things that you see kind of playing out today among, teenagers and young adults is just folks just lying in their bed, staring at the iPhone or an iPad, whatever it might be. And they're not doing all that much. And so I was sort of seeing this play out and then came across the term bed rotting and obviously understood that this is what it is. And it's not conducive to sex insofar as people are often kind of in their own bedrooms, and their girlfriend, their boyfriend may be across, the town, the city, whatever. But there's a way in which I think the technology has kind of tapped or sapped, I should say, the kind of the energy and the in-person, socializing that would have in a different day led to sex.
The decline, though, like I was 18 once. I had a first serious girlfriend a million years ago. And without getting too graphic, we were like rabbits. Are kids not doing that these days? Like, it's not just the older people, it's young people, which is kind of shocking to me.
That's correct. And so we have a kind of a graph in this report on the sex recession at the Institute for Family Studies that is looking at sexlessness among young adults from 1990 to 2024. And it's about 15%, from about 1990 to about 2010, give or take. And then it basically doubles almost. So we're seeing about, 24% of young adults reporting they've had no sex in the last year, again, aged to 18 to 29. Other research tells us that sex is down among teenagers as well. So again, this is I think it's a consequence of many things, but I think one of the things it's a consequence of is the way in which people are kind of devoting too much time, energy, and attention to the virtual world rather than the real world. And we do see in this report as well, we have a tracker for young adults socializing with friends. It's the hours per week that young adults are spending with their friends. And we see that goes from 12 hours per week in about 2003 down to just 5.1 hours in 2024. So just kind of a dramatic decline in young adults socializing, which obviously affects their capacity to date, to mate, to marry, and to have sex as well.
Is it because we feel like being on our phones is socializing? Like scrolling on social media feels social to me when in a way it's kind of not?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a way in which often you're watching people that you know or talking to people that you know, or you're kind of tracking, celebrities or politicians or other folks. You kind of have some sense that you know. But again, it's a simulacra of, socializing oftentimes. It's a simulacra of being with people. And what we really need, and not just in the sexual arena, but in other arenas, of course, too, is to have much more in-person socializing. We've also been seeing in the same actual data set that we focus on for this report, happiness reports, David, are coming down among prime-aged adults as well. So, we are, as Aristotle said, we're social animals, and we are actually much more likely to thrive when we have opportunities to be with other people in the real world and to touch them and to be touched, including when it comes to sex as well.
Some folks that you interviewed said they'd rather sleep than have sex. On the one hand, I think that's funny. On the other hand, I can sometimes relate. Like, we're all busy. What are some of the other reasons or things that people are saying that they would rather do than have sex on a, I guess weekly basis or whatever the regular interval should be?
Well, I think people can be busy with regards to obviously work or, other things that are happening in their lives. Maybe the kids are up, need homework help. You can imagine. But I do think, part of the story here is there's less marriage. That's one of the factors that's driving, sex down in clear and important ways. And then the other big factor is just the way in which often almost involuntarily people find themselves just kind of scrolling or watching a series on Netflix, whatever, in ways that don't kind of, conduce to having sex. And we've seen, like historically, for instance, that like when the power goes out in cities, often 9 months later, you'll see an uptick in babies, So it's just that we have so many basically options now for entertainment, David, to distract us from kind of being together, that this is sort of one of the consequences of that dynamic.
Does adult entertainment play a role, like pornography, the access to it, or is that a scapegoat that we like to talk about? There's something else and deeper going on.
I think pornography does play a role. I think it's both a kind of, can be like a release valve for people, and then it can also be kind of, a competitive alternative to real sex. And so I think, if you didn't have access to really high quality pornography, you might be more inclined to make an effort, to go out and date, mate, marry, have sex, all that kind of stuff. So I do think that pornography is one of the factors that is kind of playing a role in terms of this sort of virtual world that's kind of pushing people away from the real world.
If someone's listening right now and they're thinking, gee, I'm in this group that isn't doing it very often, but I would like to do it very often, what would you recommend to them?
So, I think part of it is just kind of being also more deliberate about not kind of being on your device. If, we have a charger in the kitchen corner and we're really trying to get everyone to kind of keep their devices on the charger rather than with them. So it's kind of like being more ascetical, I think, is part of the answer when it comes to technology, having like little customs, little norms that allow you to kind of keep the device, or the devices at bay for substantial amounts of time. Jean Twenge is a psychologist with a new book on the kind of the 10 rules for kids. And her most important rule is no phones in the bedroom for kids. But I think that same rule could apply for adults as well.
Yeah.
But I think the other point here too is that we've been seeing, as I mentioned before, just this incredible decline in socializing. So I just encourage people to kind of go out more often with friends, exercise more with friends, volunteer more with friends. I'm religious, go to church more. These are the kinds of things that'll put you in touch with more people in the real world. I think that's, certainly one way to increase your romantic prospects and then also your odds of sex down the road as well.
Well, Brad Wilcox is a professor of sociology at the University of Virginia. He's a fellow at the Institute for Family Studies. And check out his book, Get Married, Why Americans Must Defy the Elites, Forge Strong Families, and Save Civilization, available wherever books are sold. Brad, I appreciate you chatting with me today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, David.
After the break, a scientist who discovered beer, sex, and cannabis. If you use them, or do them, mosquitoes will want to bite you more. Details up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Attention all small biz owners. At the UPS Store, you can count on us to handle your packages with care. With our certified packing experts, your packages are properly packed and protected. And with our pack and ship guarantee, when we pack it and ship it, we guarantee it. Because your items arrive safe or you'll be reimbursed. Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Product services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable. Come into your local store today.
This is the show that proves science is funny and relationships are rocket science. The Last Show with David Cooper.
That's the sound of me making the sound of a mosquito buzzing. And if you hate being bit by mosquitoes, there's new research that says all you have to do is avoid beer, avoid weed, and avoid sleeping with other people. All the fun stuff. I'm here with someone who's done research on this, and I love that they've done research on this. He's a biophysicist and mosquito researcher from Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands. His name is Dr. Felix Hol. Felix, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
At first, it seems like you studied something in earnest, like what causes a mosquito to bite someone. But the way you went around this study, or the way you actually did it, was pretty fun. You did it at a music festival, right?
Oh yeah, but I mean, like doing science is fun in general, I think. So this was not the only fun project we ever did. But, well, I mean, we also studied this question in our regular lab setting. But indeed, so I guess the story that we're talking about now was done at a music festival. So this is, it's called Lowlands Music Festival. It has existed for, I think, like 30 years or so. And they always have a science component to it. So it is a huge music festival. It's like 65,000 people. It's 3 days. And they always have a small component that is about science.
I love that. It's like a science and music. You see festivals that aren't just one thing. So you decided to test whether people would be attractive to mosquitoes at this thing. What possessed you to do that?
Well, because I find it a very interesting question. I'm a mosquito scientist, so I'm really curious why mosquitoes like some people way more than they like others. But in addition to me, it seems like this is a question that many people have, right? You know, when you're at the campfire, when you're camping, when you're, outside at the bar, people always have this thing that one of them always gets all the bites and the other people don't seem to get any. So why is that? So I thought, it's something I want to study. It's also something that probably a lot of the people at the festival are kind of curious about. So let's try it out.
I actually have an adaptation that makes me perhaps a superhero. When mosquitoes land on me, they bite me, but then they fly away and leave absolutely zero mark. For whatever reason, I'm not allergic to the stuff mosquitoes inject into you. Have you heard of this adaptation before? Am I a superhero?
Well, you clearly are a superhero.
Thank you.
So I haven't heard it that much this way around, that there's absolutely no
allergy, I guess.
Like no bump, no rash, no nothing. Although, you sometimes hear it, but it's true that, mosquitoes, when they bite you, they spit their saliva into your skin, and you can have an immune reaction to that. And it can depend a lot on people, but also some people, I hear that quite often, that I live in the Netherlands, we have a particular type of mosquito here. Then people go on a holiday to Italy or France or something, and there's different species of mosquitoes there that have different saliva, and all of a sudden they get these huge reactions, whereas people here the same people would only get a really tiny reaction. So this, that differs is actually quite common.
Okay, so I might not be not allergic to regional mosquito saliva, but at least in North America, I'm immune and therefore a superhero. Let's stop talking about me. So how did you test the attractiveness of individuals at a music festival? I guess you gave them a survey to ask what they'd been doing that day?
So we did a couple of things. So first, we wanted to just quantify how strongly do these people attract mosquitoes. So we brought a lot of cages with mosquitoes. So we just had like a small plexiglass box in which we put something like 25 mosquitoes. And the wall of that box was made in such a way that it had really tiny holes in it. And those tiny holes were so small that when somebody pressed their arm against the side of a cage, their smell, so their odor, could go inside the cage. And the mosquitoes could fly towards them because they can smell the person. But the holes were so small that they actually could not bite through it. So the people were not actually getting bitten, but the mosquitoes were trying to bite them. So it's basically as if you're teasing them with like a slice of pizza or something.
So it's sort of like a competition. Who's the most attractive to mosquitoes? And people in the festival were lining up to get not bit, but at least have the mosquitoes fly close to them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so on the other side of the cage, there was some sugar water because mosquitoes also like sugar water. We had a little camera that was filming the cage, and through that camera, we wrote some software that could basically track the mosquito flight. And using that software, we could just give a number to everybody. Like, you attracted 40 mosquitoes, because mosquitoes can, of course, just, they can land, they can fly away, they can land again. So you can have pretty high numbers. And like that, we really saw a huge diversity. We saw some people that put their arm against the cage, and in like 20 seconds, all the mosquitoes are all over them, trying to bite them, super active. Whereas for other people, it was really the opposite. And then, of course, there's everything in between.
Did it surprise you that there was such great variance in how much mosquitoes liked some people versus others?
Well, I guess anecdotally we knew that, right? Because we know, like I know that I'm less attractive than my partner, for instance, right? So in that sense, we expected that. But the diversity in this population was really, it was very large. There were some people that the mosquitoes really wouldn't get close to. So that was indeed a bit of a surprise. Well, so that was the first thing we did. We quantified how strongly attractive they were. And then indeed, as you said, we also had them fill out a survey. So the survey had all kinds of questions on, behavior, diet, substance use, alcohol intake, all kinds of things. We also did like a breathalyzer test. And then we actually took a skin sample. So we just had people swab their own skin and we used that to determine what kind of microbes we could find on the skin.
And that's where the fun stuff comes in. Beer, cannabis, and of course sharing a bed with someone. So there's no risk of me ever having to deal with that because I have a lousy personality.
No, that's not no.
But those were the things that really stood out, which is so funny. It's like all the fun stuff means mosquitoes are going to fly right towards you.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what it looks like. They just, maybe they have the same taste as the general party animal. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? What would be the mechanism for a mosquito to be more attractive to me if I've chugged a beer or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, this study doesn't really allow us to answer that question, right? Because, in this study, we have data on how strong these people attract mosquitoes, on their characteristics, and we can see correlations. So we can see that the people that drank beer attract more mosquitoes compared to the ones that did not. But the mechanism, we really don't have any, we don't have any evidence for that. Of course, we can speculate. Could be that beer makes you smell different because mosquitoes use their sense of smell a lot to find people. Could also be that, beer modifies your behavior. Maybe the beer drinkers are, dancing more ecstatically, or maybe they sweat more, maybe they're a little bit warmer. So, this could be mediated through all kinds of effects.
Interesting. And I suppose sharing a bed with someone, I know I'd like to kind of imply that it's sex, but it's really just sharing a bed with another person might have more odors on you, more sweat on you, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, in the questionnaire we asked, did you sleep together with someone? We didn't specifically ask if people were having sex. That was just because, the ethical approval for the survey would have taken longer if you asked very explicit sex questions, although we were allowed to ask explicit drug use questions. And, in the Netherlands, stuff like cannabis is legal, but ecstasy, cocaine is not, and that we could still ask.
And the harder drugs, were the mosquitoes attracted to that?
No, there we actually did not see. We did not see any effect. So basically, any of the other drugs, amphetamines, cocaine, ecstasy, bunch of other stuff, we did not see an effect.
But kids at home, we're not saying don't do these drugs to get bitten by mosquitoes, or avoid it at least. We're just saying what the science says. Were there anything that repelled mosquitoes specifically? My understanding that sunscreen might have had that effect.
Yeah, so sunscreen, that was a pretty clear effect. Sunscreen really seemed to work a bit like a repellent. I hadn't heard that before, haven't seen that in the scientific literature, so this was a bit of a surprise. At the same time, when you think about it, sunscreen makes you smell differently. It also puts a bit of a layer on your skin that maybe keeps some of the sweaty smells in. So maybe that's how it works. But we clearly saw this effect.
Any other things cause mosquitoes to fly away from you, or is it just avoiding beer, cannabis, and sharing a bed?
Well, no, a recent shower. So we basically asked when people last showered, and the people that had their shower most recently, so within 6 hours before the test, they were actually most attractive. So it seems like showering longer ago makes you less attractive, and that was a bit counterintuitive to what I thought.
Interesting. I have terrible hygiene, so maybe this is part of the reason I'm a superhero and don't really get bit by mosquitoes.
Yeah, it's ideal.
Well, I love that you're a mosquito researcher. I love that you did this science, and I'm really glad you came on the show to share it with us, Felix.
The pleasure was likewise.
Dr. Felix Hol is a biophysicist and mosquito researcher from Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands. Here's what we'll discuss next. Applying for jobs has never been easier. Think that's great? It's a problem. Companies get a tsunami of resumes. They ghost applicants at record highs. And those people applying for jobs are left feeling invisible. So, is job hunting a game of numbers where no one wins? We'll answer that in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 50% off with minimum purchase plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Today, applying for jobs has never been easier. Just a few clicks and your resume is out there. Sounds amazing. Well, I'm not so sure. This simplicity has a dark side. Flooded inboxes, ghosted applicants, and of course, crushing self-doubt. So let's talk about why resume convenience might be the job market's biggest trap here with Future of Work correspondent at Business Insider, Tim Paradis. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David, for having me.
You wrote an article on this that argues that how easy it is to apply for jobs right now creates a whole host of new problems for people seeking jobs. What are these problems? Can you explain why something that seems like progress has backfired on us?
I think it's a situation of unintended consequences. Like you of course want to, if you're an employer, you like the idea of lowering barriers to entry so that you can get, a great pool of applicants, make it simple. Don't discourage people from applying. It all sounds great. And if you're the applicant, you think, great, I don't have to spend as much time going through the process. I can really get in front of somebody and maybe move the ball down the field in terms of getting a job. But the problem is the numbers just don't work out. It kind of, like I said, it's unintended consequences. You get so many applicants, then companies are overwhelmed. They feel like they have to use tools like applicant tracking software, which, a lot of job seekers that I talk to just absolutely hate because they feel like they're not even getting a chance to get through. And so it's just meant the numbers are so inflated that people who are applying feel like they have to just keep applying because it's a numbers game. One of the people at job seekers I talked to for this piece talked about being a numbers game, and then the HR managers and the recruiters and all those folks and the hiring managers then have to sift through this huge pile of resumes. So it's kind of just a mess.
And it's easier to apply than ever. Personalized cover letters, which is a trick from applying for jobs in my day. Side note, I hate that I have to say in my day now that I'm almost 40. It used to be this extra work that you could do to make yourself look really good. Now you can just ask a generative AI model to write a personalized cover letter or spruce up or tailor your resume for an individual company, and boom, you've got 50 different resumes. It's easy for me to apply, but this means employers just get stacks and stacks of digital paperwork, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And there's also, those tools are really helpful. And I think a lot of the recruiters I talk to say that the customizing your cover letter and your resume for the job makes sense, not just matching keywords that are in a job description, but also just showing, really tailoring it to show you have an interest in the role and how you might be a good fit. But the downside too is that with AI, there's kind of a sameness to a lot of these things, and everybody's resume can start to seem the same. And it's not just, lots of M dashes and all the things that AI likes to do in its writing, but just like, I don't know, I think it's just harder to for a lot of recruiters to see through, and they've got 50 resumes that look the same. What do you do then?
Many job seekers, like you interviewed a few people for your article, apply to hundreds, in some cases thousands of times without hearing back. What does that do to someone's sense of self-worth?
I've talked to folks, not just for this piece, but for prior stories, who it just can be crushing, as you said in the intro. It can just really, it can really lead to big questions around like, why am I even bothering, all that sort of stuff. At the same time, a lot of people feel stuck. They think if they believe it to be a numbers game, then it's understandable why they would just keep hitting apply, especially if it isn't that hard to do, because they just want to break through somehow.
Is cold applying for a job just submitting your resume through a job portal where you've met no one at the company, know no one at the company, have no personal connection with them? Is it kind of a dead end these days? Is there a better way?
I think in many cases it can be a dead end, but at the same time, again, job seekers I've talked to say at least it's something they can point to as being productive and demonstrable. I think that if you are cold applying from the experts I talked to, that's fine. You can do that, but then you need to, that's where the process really begins, not ends. You need to then go out and find people, even if it's just DMing somebody on LinkedIn that you don't know, but just saying, hey, I applied here. I was, hoping you could take a look at it, something like that. And it's also something you can, of course, do before you apply to get some insights into that. That's hard too, because again, the numbers thing becomes a problem. If you're on LinkedIn as a recruiter for, say, a major company, you're going to get a lot of DMs on LinkedIn too from job seekers. So it's not by any means foolproof, but it is a better thing than maybe just, so-called spray and pray, where you just apply everywhere, but then don't do anything beyond hitting that submit button.
That's what my girlfriend did when she got her first job in her career now. She applied to a million jobs and then tried to figure out on LinkedIn who the hiring manager was and tried to ask them for coffee. And of course, many people didn't respond, but it really went a long way when one of the people who did respond ended up hiring her. Let's talk about these great, quote unquote, great new tools like applicant tracking systems. They're supposed to help employers sift through the noise, but they often filter out good candidates, don't they?
They can. I mean, a lot of people who research this will say that, just looking at a resume and based on what somebody has done before is not necessarily a good predictor of what they will do in the future and their aptitude for doing something. So I think that's probably the biggest drawback, which is if you're just matching keywords from a resume to keywords in a job, you can tailor your resume to do that. And especially, as you said earlier, with AI, you can do that more easily than ever. It's just not necessarily a good predictor of how somebody would do in a job. So I think that's where recruiters have this very blunt tool of the ATFs, of the applicant tracking software, to see who might be good for something, but it's just not as good, as maybe a more in-depth conversation with somebody, or a lot of companies are trying to do assessments, tests, things like that to try to gauge how well somebody might do a certain role.
Talk to me about this Cobra effect that you write about in your article. What is it and how does it affect job seekers?
Yeah, it was one of the... she's sort of runs a career advice site and knows a lot about this stuff. And she was saying that it's a case of the Cobra effect, which was, looking back, was essentially this is sort of colonial India. They had to, there was a problem with too many cobras. And so the British government, and this is rudimentary understanding, so you may need to fact check me on this, but they essentially put a bounty on cobras. And so then people could turn them in and say, okay, here are the cobras that I killed. And, now there are fewer cobras. But then once they started paying money for cobras, farmers started raising cobras because it was a source of income. And then the British government realized what farmers were doing. And then they said, well, we're not going to pay you anymore for cobras. So then the farmers released all their cobras because they weren't getting paid for them anymore. So they ended up with more cobras. So her point was the idea of of the Cobra effect is that the fix can actually create its own problems and could potentially even be worse than the initial problem it was intended to fix.
Interesting. So what are the good ways to find a job these days? Is it really just word of mouth? Someone you used to work with works at a company now, they refer you, you cut the line of noise of hundreds or even thousands of applicants. What do you recommend to people seeking jobs right now?
What you just said is absolutely the ideal, right? It's somebody that you either have worked with before, somebody that you know, somebody you can reach out to get around that ATS, and just so that you can get seen. If it's somebody walks a resume down the hall for you on your behalf, that's hugely powerful versus just being one of many numbers in a system. But the problem, of course, is not everybody knows people at every company, and if you're earlier in your career, you haven't necessarily set up that big network. You've got a bunch of other friends who are 24 and all looking for their sort of first real jobs, quote unquote, and it can be really tough.
Yeah, where does that leave entry-level applicants who don't have that established career and can't get a word-of-mouth referral?
I mean, in those cases, I've talked to folks who run career services office at colleges, things like that. That's where they'll say, hey, try to fall back on your alumni network, try to, try to get internships so that you can get that sort of face-to-face, so you get that email address of the person who's doing the hiring. So I think that's certainly, it all comes back down to sort of somehow making a connection with people and somehow standing out. We, not myself, but elsewhere at Business Insider, have written about people going back to paper resumes to drop them off places, things like that. Just anything to sort of stand out in some way without being, too bonkers in what you're doing in terms of one recruiter was telling me about somebody knew that somebody liked cupcakes. So they had a bunch of cupcakes delivered, and I think they still did okay. But, just kind of funny that like there are, I guess anything that people can do to stand out within reason.
Don't get me started on the dreaded networking events or networking mixers. I'm getting horrible acid flashbacks about those. Well, Tim, thanks for talking to me about the article and about all this. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Tim Paradis is a future of work reporter at Business Insider. That is the show. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, the last show is available as a podcast. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com. And there you can find out more details about said podcast, including how to subscribe. I'm David Cooper. That is a wrap on the week. I appreciate it so much you tuning in. That made no grammatical sense. And this was The Last Show. We'll be back Monday.
ABC Wednesday. Shifting Gears is back.
He has arisen.
Tim Allen and Kat Dennings return in television's #1 new comedy.
What?
With a star-studded premiere including Jenna Elfman, Nancy Travis, and...
Hey, buddy!
A big home improvement reunion.
Welcome.
Oh, boy.
That guy's a tool.
Shifting Gears. Season premiere Wednesday, 8/7 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.